Today we're going to talk about footwork. In the Aikibujutsu program, we use what's called a T stance, and you'll also see similar footwork from Taekwondo and Karate, and we're going to kind of dissect what the differences are. So we're going to use this black line here as a reference. So in Taekwondo, Karate, kickboxing, Thai boxing, they're all pretty similar with their footwork. They have this really strong forward stance with both toes pointing relatively forward. And this line will intersect down the middle where my center of balance is. So if I face this way, it's going to be the same thing. I'm facing forward, and this line comes down the middle right in between my legs. So this is really good to have good forward and back pressure, and we can get really good punches off and strikes and kicks, but it lacks a little bit of mobility sometimes. And most important for us, it lacks range. So what we do is rather than have this line come down the middle into our center of gravity here, we put our lead foot on the line. And this is called a T stance because I have my back leg pointing out, my other leg pointing forward, just like it was a T intersection. When you do the T stance, you don't have your back leg on the same line as your lead leg because you'd have good forward and back mobility, but you don't have good sideways stability. So to counteract that, we take our rear leg here and we take it about half a step, 3/4 step off. So now we have good front and back motion, and then we also have some good side motion, and we're still pretty stable. The other thing we do with the T stance is our range. So if I go back to like some traditional karate footwork, right? We're primarily a blade-oriented martial art. So we want range. Range is our friend. So if I have this karate stance, a good front stance, and I put my blade out here, I have an okay amount of range. But when I do a T stance, watch how much farther the blade comes out from just being in this normal stance here. So here's T stance, and here's front stance. A good amount of distance difference. So because of that, that's kind of why we use the T stance. We want a lot of that range. We want to be nimble because we want to be able to get out of the way. We don't focus primarily on blocking. We're striking, we're moving, we might deflect oncoming attacks, but we very rarely, if ever, actually block an attack. We're primarily always offensive. So when we use our T stance, the way we generate power is primarily two ways. We'll either do a drop step or we'll do a hip rotation. Hip rotation is very common in like Taekwondo, Karate, where you actually physically move the hip like this to generate your power. Our method that we primarily use is called a drop step. So it's just like you're walking forward. I'm just carrying my mass and momentum into there, getting energy that way. So I'd pick up and step down. It's like this. So that's your drop step. You can go backwards. It's like this, or forwards. Okay. When we drop step, you don't have to bring it all the way up. This is just an exaggeration so you can clearly see. You can scoot, almost slide your foot across the floor, just barely off of it, if that's what you like to do. So when we use the drop step to strike, rather than this hip rotation, we're going with the mass of our body at the same time. So if this is a jab for boxing, like this, the way we do it with a drop step is it's at the same time. I'm sinking my weight into my hand at the same time. When we move forward and back, side to side, we have this cross step as well. So if I'm moving forward here, this back foot is going to do a forward cross step. It's just going to come right in front of the here and come straight out. So the reason we use this This comes primarily from our spear curriculum. But if I have my blade out like this, and I'm trying to point at a specific target, if I just walk, see the tip just bounces up and down. I want my tip to be on target at all times. So when I do this cross step, I get a lot of driving power. But if you watch the tip of the blade here, it's going to relatively stay in its zone where it should be. It doesn't really move out of the area where I want it to be. It's where I want it all the time. And you can do the same thing sideways. So it's always on point. It's one less factor to worry about. From our footwork, our kicking is a little bit different from what you would find in like Taekwondo and stuff like that. So typically in a conventional system like Taekwondo, you'll have your power leg at the back rather than the front. So most of your kicks will come off of your back leg, and then you'll bring it back like this. We always put forward energy whenever possible. So that's part of the reason we do this side cross step. It drives power forward. So a lot of times what you'll see is we kick off of our front leg because we're primarily a blade and grappling system. So our lead leg is really our power leg. So if we're looking at this as a boxing perspective, we'd be like a southpaw left-handed boxer. So I'm right-handed, my right hand and right leg is forward. So when I kick, I can use like a skip step or a cross step to put that driving power forward like this. And then we step down forward with it. So we almost never will kick stationary and then bring it down because there's not a lot of power there. There are some parts in our universal concepts and principles that might dictate as an okay thing. But as far as a kick, it's not going to be powerful and effective in that manner. So we're always putting our mass forward whenever possible. So when we do that, we'll do this cross step or we'll do a skip. It's still the same thing. So if I do like this like front snap kick, for example. If I do the cross step, it looks like this. Down. If I do it with a skip, it looks like this. Down. There is one time where we kind of get away from the T stance, and it looks pretty similar to like a karate horseback stance. And it's where we take our foot, we make them both face the same way. And this is when we're going to do a side kick. So our side kick, backtrack a little bit. So if I'm doing Taekwondo, again, it comes from the back leg. We'll bring it up and chamber it and kick out and then back. We don't do that. A side kick is literally sideways. So if I'm facing my target like this, I'm going to do a side kick. My body's going to be facing that. And I'm going to kick this way. Again, we're going to use our cross step for this. You can use either a front or rear cross step. We prefer front because we get a lot more driving force from that. The back step is fine. It's faster, I think. But it doesn't have that driving force the front one does. So whenever possible, we use this front step here. So when I do this side kick, it'll look like this.